Hey, and thanks for joining us for another session of Pellet Tech 101. Today I'm going to be showing you how we assemble our combustion exhaust blower fan kit. Alright, so when you buy the combustion exhaust motor kit from us, it's going to include the motor right here. We're going to have an adapter plate, and we're also going to have a 6-inch round gasket. Now, a lot of our motor kits will also include the paddle. We offer a 4 3/4 inch paddle, we offer a 5-inch paddle, and we do have kits that don't include the paddle where you use your existing. In this case, we are going to be installing a new fan paddle on the motor. In the event that you're using your old paddle, you may want to use heat or lubricant in removing that from your old motor shaft. Additionally included with the motor, we have the hardware that's going to be needed to mount the motor on the existing housing. So we have the screws and the lock washers that are going to be used for the actual motor to the adapter plate. And then we have the nuts that are going to be needed to actually secure the adapter plate onto the housing of the stove. Additionally, we always include some extra terminal connectors, just in the event that your terminal connectors at the end of the combustion motor wires are different than what was currently on your existing motor. So at this point, we already have the existing housing pulled out of the stove, and we've already removed our old motor and our old paddle that was on there with that adapter plate. The tools that I'm going to need as I assemble this together is going to be a very simple ratchet here. I have 2 sockets. Right here I have a 9mm, and then I believe this is a 9/32, and then I have a socket extender with an adapter here. And lastly, I have a very small Allen wrench that's going to be used to tighten up the set screw on the fan paddle. So the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take this round gasket. This is a lyotherm material gasket. It is very fragile, so be very careful when you're picking this up and moving it. It's important that it doesn't have any breaks or gaps in it. We're just going to place that onto the existing studs that's on the housing. Next, we're going to go ahead and we're going to place our adapter plate over the top. We have multiple holes in the adapter plate, so there's a lot of different positions that we can line it depending on the existing housing and what model stove that you have. Next, we have our motor. The shaft is going to slide through the center hole. We have 3 studs on this motor. They're going to go onto the studs on the adapter plate. As I push this down, I'm going to see that each one of these is seated all the way down to the floor of that adapter plate. We want to make sure that it's even all the way around. At this point, I'm ready to put on the hardware. It's going to hold everything in place from the motor to the adapter and the adapter plate onto the housing. So let's first do the motor. So the motor is going to have the little locking washers. So we just have 3 of those on each 3 studs. And we have our small nuts here. And we're just going to initially thread those on by hand. Just like that. They are very small nuts, so if you got big old fingers like me. We don't have the adapter plate screwed down yet, so I put that on there. So I'm just going to tighten that down. Again, we're just finger tightening everything here. And that one's on there. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my nuts that hold the adapter plate to the housing and make sure I get those on there. Again, we're just going to tighten those down by hand. I dropped one on the floor, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab that as soon as I have these in place. Just like that. Just like that, and just like that. Alright, so those are all on there. And then we just have our last one here. Put that right on the adapter plate. Alright, so now everything is just kind of hand tightened. So at this point, I want to go ahead and I want to tighten this up. So I'm first going to use the 9mm socket, and I'm just going to hand tighten down each one of the nuts that's holding the adapter plate onto the housing. So everything is just kind of snugged by hand. And then I'm ready to go ahead and put on the ratchet here. There's no need to over tighten this. So that's important. There's no need to crank these down. I just want it nice and snug. All right. All right, all nice and snug on our adapter to the housing. Next, we want to go ahead and tighten up the nuts that are holding our motor onto the adapter plate. So I'm going to switch out the 9mm socket, and we'll put on the 9/32 socket. And same thing here, I just want to snug these up. As you will see, these have a rubber cushion grommet, and that is designed as kind of a shock absorber there. And again, there is no reason to over tighten these. We just simply want to snug these down. Just like that, giving very little force. All right, so everything now is secure. I can now pick this up as one full assembly. I can move it with my hand a little bit and making sure that everything is nice and secure on here. Our last step is going to be putting on the fan paddle onto the motor shaft. So as you will see here, this is has a flat spot on the shaft of that motor where our fan paddle is going to go. So our fan paddle will fit right in through the housing here. Again, there's two different sizes for these. There's a 4 3/4 inch and there's a 5 inch. If your paddle is not fitting through this opening, it means that you do have the wrong one, and we need to make sure that we get you the right one. So the position of the paddle is very important. As you can see, there's a number of different areas that this can be locked down onto that shaft. My general rule of thumb is that it is just beneath the end of the motor shaft. So I have this set here probably about an 1/8 inch or so from flush on that motor shaft. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to tighten that down. Again, set screw right on the flat spot of the shaft. You can hold the shaft with one finger like this and push that set screw so it's tight. Do not over crank this because it can make your job very difficult if you ever try to loosen this up. So just nice and snug on there. And I have that in place. This is probably an 1/8 inch to a 1/4 inch from the end of that shaft. And again, that can be adjusted if needed. At this point, everything is installed on this motor. On the base of the housing right here, there is a gasket that's going to go from that motor to the floor of the stove. It's important that you inspect that gasket. If that gasket is ripped or torn or faded in any way, it is important that that is replaced before you secure this back down to the stove. Have to have a proper seal there so we have proper draft. We do also offer these gaskets if you need them. We also have the port on the exhaust fan here. This will generally have an adapter that leads to the exhaust where our exhaust venting hooks up. Make sure this adapter is put back on the housing if it's removed. There's going to be a screw on each side, and then it's very important that you put high temperature sealant around where those two pieces can join together to make sure there's no exhaust leaks. This particular housing had a limit switch that went in the hole. So if I had to pull out that limit switch while doing this replacement, make sure to put the limit switch back in, tighten it down, and put your two wires back on that. Other than that, the housing is going to bolt down. Again, we have on this one, we have 6 screws or 6 bolts that are going to go in place that hold this housing in place. I just want to make sure, same thing, that those are nice and tight and snugged up. Again, we have our electrical connections here. Our motor has 3 wires. We have a black and a white, which are our hot and neutral wires, and then we have a green wire, which is our ground wire. The green wire, again, is a ground and only needs to be hooked up if you have an existing ground in your stove. If you do not, you can simply leave this wire dangling or tie it up as it is, or there is a Phillips screw that you can remove from the top of the motor magnet, and you can simply take this wire right off of there. The other 2, black and white, again, just hot and neutral. Does not matter which wires those connect to from the lead wires coming out of your stove. If you need to change the end connectors, again, we do supply you with some male connectors so you can swap these out in the event that your stove needs it. Other than that, that is the complete assembly of our combustion exhaust motor blower fan kit and how it goes onto your existing housing. All right, cool. Thanks for joining us for another session of Pellet Tech 101. You've just installed your exhaust fan motor blower kit. Thanks again for joining us. You have tips, ideas, suggestions, videos you want to see? Comment below. We'll see you soon.